Welcome to the Calling on You podcast. This podcast is my 365-day challenge and goal to speak to one new person each day and every day about fear and what we can learn from facing our fears. Why is fear an interesting and important topic for us to discuss? I believe that when we face our fears, we open ourselves up to new opportunities to live a greater and more meaningful life. When we face our fears, we discover that we are capable of so much more than what we ever imagined. My dad gave me a letter where he said to me, "Life is not a dress rehearsal." I have taken this to mean that every moment counts, and it is up to each of us to choose what we want to do with the moments that are passing by with increasing speed. It's up to all of us to make the most of what little time we have here on Earth. But we also don't need to think that we need to do everything alone. Along the way, we will meet some amazing people, mentors, and friends. I hope this podcast can help each and every one of us to live a little more on the edge of our comfort zone and challenge our fears and help others as they are facing their fears as well. Now, here is today's story about fear and what we can learn.
Hello, my name is Forrest Tuff. I am a multimedia professional out of Atlanta, Georgia. You know, when I think about facing my fears, the biggest fear that I've had is the fear of giving up. You know, as a young boy, there are a lot of things that just didn't come naturally to me. I think I had the potential, but it just didn't happen. And so I had to work hard. I had to have a strong work ethic, and I realized that I had a relentless drive to get where I needed to go. So throughout life, I always worked hard, and I always never gave up. I always wanted to give my best on everything because I remember that feeling of not being my best. And I think for me, I always want to give my best. Now, that doesn't mean that I always have to win or I always have to achieve every goal that first go round. But for me, it's just knowing that I put everything into it and that at the end of the day, I could look back on myself and say, you know what? I gave it all I had. There was nothing else to give. And at this point, I'm just not able to achieve it. But now I got to go back in and make it happen and give it another shot. So that fear of just not having the tenacity to keep pushing forward, to not drive or push yourself to achieve or to give everything, for me, that is the worst thing that I could ever imagine for myself, because I've been in situations where I felt like I just wanted to give up. I've had things happen in life where, you know, I wasn't making the money that I wanted. You know, socially things weren't happening, and it just seems like things were crumbling also in my personal life. And in those moments, you just want to just lay down and just call it quits. You just say, you know what, I've had enough. There's no more that I have to give, and it's not going to change. But then there's that small voice inside you that just says, you know what, pick it up and take baby steps. Because oftentimes when you're going through these phases, you're not having things go your way, giving up, although it's the obvious choice, it feels great, there's something that tells you to just keep going. That small voice inside you to just keep going, keep working at it. You know, play the long game. You know, it may not happen overnight, but that victory will come if you continue to pursue it. So for me, in those dark moments, when I find myself, you know, just not having those finances, not having those things available, I felt less than accomplished. And, you know, you're dealing with the fact that, you know, people may have seen you a certain way, or now how do you perceive yourself? But it's in those points where you have to now believe that I am this person. You have to write out, who are you? You know, what does that mean for you? You have to have faith, not only in yourself, but faith in the process. You say, if I stick to doing these positive things, something good will finally come. You know, fear is like seasons. You know, those emotions are like seasons. There's summer, there's spring, there's fall and winter. And in that spring and summer, things are going great, you know, but in that fall and winter, you know, things seem like they're not just happening. Stuff is falling off. And in wintertime, it just seems like nothing is making it. But it's in that time that you have to have the tenacity to keep going. And so for me, it took years, took a few years for things to turn around. But I trusted in the process, and I didn't give up on myself, and I continued to push. And then finally, I started my business, and things started to grow well with my business. I actually started to make a profit. I started to have a return on my investments. And that was a great feeling, because when you have been in that winter for so long, but you've had the faith to say, I know that these things are going to continue to happen. I just have to trust in that process. And I always say that when you're dealing with that fear, you have to believe in a process. You have to know that sometimes it may not change overnight. But when it finally did, it was summer, spring and summer, those things came through, everything went well. And, you have this great season where everything seems to be going your way. But in those times, you have to realize, it's because I didn't give up. It's because I had the faith to believe in myself and believe in a higher power and know that things won't stay the same forever if I continue to plant good seeds. And also think when you're in that place of fear, you have to remember, I always say this about planting seeds, you always get a return on what you put out. So even in those times, you have to be fair to people, be fair to businesses, work with ethics, do things in a certain way so that when it's time for you to reap that harvest, you're going to get back what you put out. So that fear, while it is a temporary feeling, you have to overcome it by doing things that will offset the process of failure. Because failing does not mean you don't achieve success. Failing can be the lesson. So you have to know that even when you fail, hey, I just learned something. Now I know how not to do it. And so when you have fear of failure, sometimes that can be the greatest lesson in helping you get where you need to go in life. So in my journey, it's been one of failures. It's been one of successes. It's been one of life lessons. It's been one of learning to listen to others, find mentors, find support. You can also use what sometimes people like to call haters. Well, guess what? If people are hating, use that energy and use it for positive. Use anything you can for motivation. Sometimes the fear and being scared is just, what do people think about me during this process, or what's happening and what's going on? And you have to just take everything you can and use it and turn it into some type of positive energy to motivate yourself. So for me, I've been down that dark road of looking and just seeing darkness down and no light at the end of the tunnel. But, I had to just keep going. I had to keep believing. And when things started to shift, I realized that I had given myself an opportunity by choosing to believe in the process and believe in myself. And I'd encourage each of you today who's listening to this podcast to don't give up on yourself. Never give up on you. Because at the end of the day, the things that we want for ourselves, although we love to have a team of supporters and people behind us, we have to realize that these things that we want, we have to be the catalyst for them. We have to give people the light. We have to show people by example that, hey, you can make it out of these dark situations. And no matter how dark it gets sometimes, if you can find someone to talk to or just have someone that can actually give you any advice, be free to take it, but you have to stay in a positive state of mind as best you can, because things will change eventually. So I would encourage you, if you're facing a fear, don't give up. Stay with it. Try to have a strong work ethic. Do anything you can to have faith. If you have to get in the mirror, talk to yourself every day. Tell yourself, I am enough. I am going to make it, and I have victory, because you know what? I am everything that I want to be. You have to tell yourself. You have to speak life into yourself and know that whatever it is you want in this earth, you can have it, but you have to believe it. You have to walk in it, and you have to face that fear and not give up on yourself in order to achieve the success that's waiting for you.
I love this, Forrest. Can you tell me a little bit about what you were like growing up as a kid? You mentioned that you had to work twice as hard and some things didn't come naturally. What was it like for you growing up in school and around your neighborhood?
You know, as a kid, I didn't realize I was a creative. Like, I didn't know that was my thing. I was a creative. So I got into sports. And, you know, sports was very competitive growing up in my neighborhood. And so I met a lot of kids that had natural talent. You know, they ran track, they played basketball, football, just had really natural talent. And while I was an athlete, I did not have that natural talent. I didn't walk out into the track field and just really pick it up. Oh, that kid can run. You know, I had to realize that, you know what, okay, I may not have this natural ability, but as I worked hard, I caught on fast. And then I ended up lettering in 3 sports. I actually went to college, you know, on a Division I scholarship and, you know, was actually inducted into the Hall of Fame at one of my colleges for basketball.
I mean, it sounds like you really ended up excelling at sports. You lettered 3 times. You went to a D. Did you say D1 school?
Yeah, Division I. Yep. Played Division I basketball.
Extremely competitive. So you're playing against the best of the best.
Right.
You know, did you really connect with your coaches? Did your coaches, when you were a kid, push you to get better? Did you have family members, or what do you attribute your hard work of when you first showed up? You see other kids that are so much better than you, but then you push yourself twice as hard to improve. Where did you find that drive to really excel?
I believe that drive that I had was internal, but also I grew up in a family with 5 kids. And when you grow up with brothers and sisters, I was the second of 5. You know, there's this hidden thing that you don't know about. You're actually vying for a spot. You're competing for that spot. Everybody's looking for their own individual space, whether you know it or not. It just happens in the hierarchy of having 5 children. So I think for me, I had this competitive streak. I'm a mild-tempered person, but I had this silent competition to always try to find my place. And I think that transferred into when I played sports. And I realized, you know, hey, you know what? You got to work. If you want to jump high, if you want to dunk the basketball, you got to work. You're 5'11", so you're going to have to work hard. But I did that. And so over time, I find myself now dunking the basketball became a part of my game. That was a part of my game, but I realized that gave me a certain space. So it seems everything that I did in life was to give me my own space. And I think that stemmed from my childhood, just trying to find my space in a family of 5 kids. And I think that same attitude has carried me forth now as a person in business. You know, I never want to give up on myself, and I always try to find a way to find my own space where I can stand out as an individual.
You mentioned that you didn't realize until later that you were a creative individual. What was that process like of discovering your creativity?
So throughout school, my mom used to always video everything. And so for me, I picked that up. So throughout high school, I would walk around with my camcorder. I'd take pictures, and I just kind of keep this stuff, but I never really realized it was something until much later, you know. And I always loved drawing. That was something that's kind of prevalent in our family, just that visual aspect. So after college, you know, there was no further professional level of playing after college. I worked a few jobs. I worked in sales. I worked in retail management. I think those were great experiences. But when I decided to start my first entrepreneurial endeavor, it was because someone asked me to do something for a birthday party. And so I found myself in this creative space of making this video and adding these special effects, and I loved it. And I found myself working for hours just perfecting this craft. And I'm like, wow, this is something I really love to do. And I found myself making videos. Everything I did made its way to the creative space and the entertainment space. And that's when I really realized that as a kid, I said, wow, I always loved this, but I never knew it was a talent. I never knew that it could be something that I could monetize to actually support my lifestyle. So it was at that point when I was asked to do that birthday that I actually realized it was something that I could use as a catalyst for business. And from there, it's taken off.
what was the next steps after you really discovered this newfound kind of passion and being able to turn it into a business? What was the next steps for you to really start to grow it?
Well, the first thing I did was I figured out how to start a business. I went and got my business license and became a registered business. I started taking classes just on how to find ways to get new clientele. And I moved into the entertainment space. For a while, I used to do promotions with a music label here in Atlanta. And so I found myself going back to that industry at this stage. I started doing music videos, and in that space of doing music videos, at the time I was doing DVD covers, posters and flyers for artists. So I stayed in that creative lane working in the music industry. And as things developed, I found myself now, I wanted to get into working with corporations and government entities. And this was over time. After being in business for about 5-6 years, I started to find different ways to make money. As I say, I started looking in that lane. How can I set myself apart from a lot of the other production companies that I'm working with? So I started to get into things that required more paperwork, meaning I had to have certain certifications or paperwork to be able to work in those sectors. And when I did that, I found out, hey, all right, it's a little tougher to get over here, but if you do it, if you make the right connections, you can get in this lane. So I found myself starting to work more with corporations and government agencies and nonprofit agencies, and that's where my business started to diversify a little bit. My portfolio diversified, and I had a lot of different clientele in different sectors.
Did that take a change in mindset of going from something that's more maybe the artists in you for music videos and stuff like that over to the corporate side, or did it just kind of merge nicely and work with your style of aesthetic?
I had to truly change my approach and my mindset. I had to realize that I'm dealing with people that have a different mind, but at the end of the day, I'm still telling a story. Like if you watch a really good music video, it tells a story. It actually helps you see the song. So I realized I have to do that for a corporation. So if I'm working with an organization, I have to be able to tell that story. If I can tell their story, paint their vision, their mission, so that their clientele or their stakeholders can see what it is that they're selling, then that became valuable. So for me, I had to learn how to navigate the waters of the conversation, how we did business, working in that corporate environment, working with government agencies. What is the languages that they speak? So for me, it was the education of learning how to work with different entities. And so for that, that's where I sought certifications and things that helped me to learn how to work in various industries. So it's the same thing. I'm telling a story at the end of the day. I'm being creative. It's just that having that conversation on how we get to that end game is what I needed to be. I needed to mold myself and adapt myself to be able to have my company move forward in those different areas.
That's really cool. And I love that you bring everything back to storytelling, because that's really what it all is the power of connecting with people through story and sharing their message.
Right.
What else have you really learned about through this medium and storytelling?
Well, I recently, probably 5 or 6 years, I branched out into filmmaking. So I decided now I want to get back into that creative space. I love to create, I love to entertain, and I love to inspire people through my messages. And this medium that we have, a video, and that is one of the greatest mediums to tell a story. And so with that, I became a filmmaker. We've done a lot of films. We worked on shorts, independent documentaries. They all have a different style to create. So it's this process. At the end of the day, you're telling a story, but there's different ways to tell that story. So, working on a documentary with information that actually happened, it's a certain way you have to handle that. You have to make sure that you're true to the story itself. You can't embellish it, because the story is based on the truth, the factual aspect of it. Now, when you're making something that has more of a fictional base, you can focus more on the entertainment. You can, blow some things out of proportion a little bit to give it the wow factor. But at the end of the day, you're giving people something they can attach themselves to. I think most people gravitate to a story that resonates somewhere, like it gives them something. If we watch superhero movies because we want to get away. You know what? We feel like, listen, this is something I would love to do. I want to save the world, or maybe the world needs saving. And you can tell by the types of movies that come out in different areas what society is doing. So I think also as a filmmaker, I'm very in tune with what's happening in society. And sometimes you can weave those messages into your projects, and that gives you that creative space to talk about something that's relevant. You don't necessarily have to do it on social media in an opinionated or, biased way, but you can just paint pictures and let people, feel how they want to feel, or, get the conversation going. So for me, the filmmaking industry has been a way for me to really get out and give that creative and informational and entertaining perspective.
Do you have a methodology or process that you use with your clients to really get to the truth and get to their core story?
Normally, I let them talk. I listen. For me, the biggest way to get people's story is to let them know that you care about what they're saying. A lot of times when you go in with an agenda, you can kind of lead people. And if you want to, it's easy to lead people down the path that you want. But I think the path of less resistance that gets the truest form of what I'm trying to find is to ask a person a question and let them talk. And they'll find out that people will talk a lot longer if you just listen to them and you affirm, okay, that's great. Yeah, tell me more. Tell me more. I'm interested about that. So for me, that's been one of the catalysts for me. That's my process, is to listen first, because I'll gauge you, I'll listen, I'll gather information. And so it helps me make a complete picture when I go into the room and now I start to mold my ideas. I have things to pull from to help keep the authenticity of what I'm doing relevant for not only the viewers, not only for myself, but also for the stakeholder or the person that's a part of that project.
That's brilliant. I love it. Forrest, can you share a small tip for anyone that is dealing with fear right now? The next time they come up against their fear, if they could hear your voice or a message that you want for them to run through their mind, what would you tell them?
Don't run from the fear. Accept it. Embrace the fear. Fear is nothing to worry about. It's a natural feeling. Embrace it. If you need to cry, if you need to shout, whatever you need to do, get it out of your system and accept the reality as it is. Once you've accepted your reality, you can now face what you're dealing with. But don't be in a place of denial. Face what you're dealing with, accept it, and then move forward.
Brilliant. Do you want to tell people where they can find the work that you're doing online, some of the videos that you're putting out? Where do people find that?
Yes, well, I'll tell you what, you can look me up, ForrestTuff.com. That's 2 R's, 2 T's, and 2 F. ForrestTuff.com. And that website will lead you to everything that I'm doing. It has all my social media links. It has videos. It has landing pages to the different aspects. Also I'm a children's author, and I'm also a TV talk show host. So it has links to all of those different entities that I work with in that creative space. Well, ForrestTuff.com.
I'd love to ask you really quick about your children's books and what inspired you to write them, and can you tell me a little bit about it? Yeah,
so my book is called Things I Like 3D, and it's basically for early childhood reading. It works with the adult system, and it talks about sight and sound words. So in early childhood learning, a lot of kids can associate things basically by sight words, rhyming words, or by sight or by sound. So the book, Things I Like 3D, is just a simple book of things that kids like. And it's repetitious. Every sentence starts with things I like. It's like, I like XYZ. The thing is, the book is in 3D. So it comes with 3D glasses. Now, the great thing about it, because it's early childhood learning, we know the kids will probably lose or throw those glasses away at some point. you just flip the book over and it's in 2D. You never lose a book. You can just read it in 2D where the colors are bright, the words are vibrant, and it also comes with an audio MP3. So not only can you hear kids reading the book, but you can hear the sounds and all the effects that are on the pages. So kids get a full immersion into the world of that book, not only by seeing the words, the repetition, but they also can hear the sounds. And the great thing about it is it was actually picked up into the school systems here, used for early childhood learning development.
Wow, this sounds like an incredible book and process to come up with something like this. How did the book come about? How did you start? Like, did you always know you were going to make it 3D from the beginning, or did some of these things evolve?
No, I had kids, and I was reading to my kids one night, and they were like, "Dad, you should make a book," because I'm always telling stories before they would go to bed. I'd always make up some story. And they would always say, Dad, you should put this in a book. And so I decided to write a book. It was inspired by my children, and that's where the concept came from. Now, as I designed that book, I always go back to that place that I had as a kid that told me, Forrest, find your own space. So as I'm looking at my book, I'm looking at other children's books, I'm going, what's not being done? What hasn't been done? And I didn't see a book that had been done, had been in 3D. At the time, 3D movies were the rage. And I was like, what if I did that in a book? That might be pretty interesting. So I found out how to do it and made the book in 3D. And that was it. I built it on the school systems because I recognized, you know what? If I want to sell this book, I want to get it into the school system. So what are children learning? So I based what I wrote about early childhood learning. So that way, when I went into the meeting room, I could actually sell how this could be educational and entertaining for kids in the school system. And that's how I got the book into the school system. But that was my marketing plan, and that was how I found my niche of where I was going to place my book and how I was going to design it. But the inspiration came from my kids.
Such a cool story. I love it. Forrest, thank you so much for being willing to come on and join me today and share your story and the incredible stuff that you're doing. I really appreciate it.